Hello everyone, and welcome to your little introductory video about yoga while pregnant. My name is Victoria, and today I will take you through kind of a little introductory information video, so practical information video on how your yoga practice could be affected or might change in your pregnancy. So the first, I would like to really make it clear here that I am not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree. I don't have any medical background. And so all of this information that I'm giving you is purely yoga related. I'm also not a mom, so I have not yet experienced what it is like to be pregnant and to practice while we're pregnant. And so this really is just a couple of things to pay attention to, both energetically and anatomically, and then to tailor make that to your body. What's really important to understand is that every single pregnancy is different. Every single woman experiences pregnancy differently, and every single woman experiences yoga in pregnancy differently. So the first bit of advice or guidance that I would like to give you for your yoga practice while you're pregnant is that the moment you find out that you are pregnant, number one is speak to your doctor about what is right and what might not be right for you. And number two, slow down everything. And that doesn't mean stop, just slow down everything and give yourself a little bit of space to observe, to become aware of your body and how it changes, your pregnancy, how you respond to it, and then movement and breath and energy as you're in the body. The beauty of being pregnant, which so many moms have shared with me, is that you start to really be fully embodied in your body because you become so aware of everything that you have this brand new, fresh experience about being in your very own body, but also being responsible for a new body. So it's a really beautiful experience. And one of the most important things to really pay attention to if you're practicing when you're pregnant is to pay attention to your own body and to understand that while something might work for some people, it might not work for you, or vice versa. Something that works for you might not be the general consensus of what you should or can do in pregnancy, but your body will be very good at telling you what it needs and what it doesn't need, what it likes, what it doesn't like, with a couple of things that you want to pay attention to. Obviously, pregnancies come in trimesters, and every trimester feels very different. And a lot of women feel quite sick and nauseous in their first trimester and then bounce back to a sense of health and well-being in their second trimester. And then a lot of women don't. A lot of women feel quite nauseous and sick throughout their pregnancy. Or some people never feel sick at all and feel great from the day they conceive till the day the baby comes. And so really allow for that individual experience to guide your practice and your attitude to your practice. What does happen quite a lot, especially at the beginning of a pregnancy, I find, is that all of this information creates a little bit of an overload. And so you start to worry about things that are in fact not quite real yet, or might never be real. And you start having this sense of anxiety of, is this right? Is this wrong? Should I be doing it? Should I not be doing it? And for many women, that leads to them stopping their yoga practice. And in fact, a lot of yoga studios do ask their students to stop practicing at the studio when they do fall pregnant, because it does change and create a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different situations for different people. But that doesn't mean that you need to stop doing everything when you fall pregnant. You're pregnant, not ill. So unless there is something that is happening in your pregnancy that is telling you to stop moving, and there's a lot of things that could do that, you're meant to do this. You're meant to be alive and pregnant at the same time. You're meant to lead a day-to-day life while growing your baby inside you. That is what nature has built you to do. And the beauty of nature is that the moment we fall pregnant, it kicks in and we kind of have this intuition of what's right or wrong. And like I said, your body's very good at letting you know what works and what doesn't work. So today I will take you through a couple of pointers of things that you can do as your body starts to transform and change, and how to mitigate certain things that might pop up in pregnancy. But as I said, pay attention to your own body, your experience, and see instead how these things might affect you. And for you, this might be the perfect modification, or you might need to change it a little bit or go back to the standard posture or way of doing things. A couple of things that we do generally recommend is that in your first trimester, you take it really easy. So this is the time when your pregnancy is still solidifying itself in whatever biological processes you're talking about. And as everyone in their pregnancy knows, the first trimester is quite crucial and often quite harrowing, both emotionally and physically. So the key is to take it really, really easy, especially in this first 12 to 14 weeks, to really give your body the time to acclimatize to the fact that it is growing a little human inside you. The best thing to do in these 14 weeks is to slow things down. If you're practicing on the platform, to go for things like mellow flows or even just the restorative and the yin practices. But you want to be very careful with the yin practices because the body starts to release a hormone called relaxin, and this relaxin starts to make your body really flexible. And you don't want to surrender into that with a yin practice. So maybe stick to very gentle movements and very gentle breath practices. So flooding the body with oxygen, taking deep breaths, long breaths, modifying the breath, meditating, and maybe even creating a connection to the little human that you're growing. So your first trimester is all about exploring and understanding and making space for your pregnancy. Give yourself the time to accept and adapt to the fact that life is no longer as it was before, and give yourself space to also allow whatever emotions that brings about. You know, there might be a sense of grief or a sense of worry or a sense of excitement, and that is all part of the process. So maybe your yoga in your first trimester is all about being in tune with that, making space for that, and allowing yourself to process all of that. And it can be very helpful if you are experiencing nausea or if you are experiencing a lot of fatigue, to move a little bit. It might help to just stop what you're doing and do a couple of cat-cow breaths, and I'll do that in a moment with you. Or it might really help to just kind of move your hips around or kind of roll your neck around. So a little bit of gentle movement to get the energy flowing sometimes really helps with nausea, especially if you're not doing it on an empty stomach. If you start to feel that your blood pressure starts to drop, so some women in their pregnancy start to feel quite woozy, then it's very important to pay attention to that as you move. And I'll show you how to modify your practice if you're starting to feel that wooziness through your postures. Start to understand how certain movements affect you and how other movements affect you. Start to understand the emotional effects of them, the energetic effects. You might feel really energized by one pose or really drained by another. So go really slow, really gentle, restorative, somatic practices that allow you to become really in tune with your own body and your baby that's growing within you. After the first trimester, you have a little bit more wiggle room. And so that is when most women, or a lot of women, tend to feel really energized and ready to go. The nausea kind of wears off, and you start to feel at home in your body again. And that's a really beautiful time, because that's when you get to really explore the physical changes in your body. You're going to start to notice that your belly needs more space. So you'll have to move in a way that accommodates your belly. You might start to notice that your lower back is starting to take a little bit of strain, or that you're generally feeling this urge to do some things and aversion to do other things. Give in to that and listen to that. It's the beautiful nature of your body telling you exactly what it needs. And then as the belly grows, you might find that the most basic normal things that you would do without thinking about before start to become quite problematic maybe, or start to cause some adverse reactions in your body, like lying on your back or lying on one side or the other. And there's ways to modify all of that. Your simple sun salutations, once your belly is fully present, might not be possible anymore, and I'll show you how to modify that for when the belly starts to grow. But the key is to stay connected to what's going on in the body and to really enjoy the process rather than feeling like something should be happening or should not be happening. Every pregnancy is different, and every pregnancy is exactly as it should be. And it is nature's way of creating the kind of home that your body and your baby need. All right, so let's get to props. Props are everything when you're practicing yoga pregnant. If you don't have the props that you generally find at the studio, like a bolster or a block, you have alternatives. You can roll up a blanket and make a little sausage out of it. You can use your throw or scatter cushions. You can use blocks or books or anything else that has a bit of shape and solidness to it. You might find that it's very comfortable sitting in a cross-legged position because the relaxing gives you space in your hips. But you might find that even then, placing a cushion under your buttocks when you sit might really help. Then you might notice that lying down on your back eventually starts to feel quite uncomfortable. So then perhaps you create a little incline with your bolster or your sausage blanket so that the weight of your baby doesn't fall back onto your breath mechanism. So creating a nice incline like that, and then maybe placing something behind your head to give you a little bit of support there if your neck needs a bit more support. You might find that lying on your side is better for you. But then pay attention to your lower back. So you tend to spend a lot of time on your side when the belly grows. And often what happens is that the top leg, when you're lying on your side, starts to pull forward and create an imbalance in the lower back, and that, has its own effects. And so instead of just lying down flat on your side, grab something, cushion, sausage blankie, or you might even have that pregnancy cushion that looks like a big sausage, and place it in between your legs. And then lie on your side like that. And you might find that this can be quite comforting. Because see the difference when you remove this from your legs? See how you roll inwards like that? And then you place it back in between your legs. And you've got a sense of support here. So this really makes quite a big difference in the comfort of your body. Good. Now, a couple of things to pay attention to when you're practicing. As you start to notice that there is something growing within you, you are naturally going to become averse to anything that compresses that space. So when it comes to your Yoga Asana practice, imagine this is your little sanctuary. This is the little home for your baby. A little box that is quite solid, but not indestructible. And it's held in place. Now, as you move through any posture, as you move through any part of the body, you want to keep that sanctuary intact. You don't want to twist it. You don't want to squish it. You don't want to flatten it. You don't want to compress it. You want to feel this box, this sanctuary, feeling spacious and open all the time. Generally, your body is probably going to let you know if something's too compressed. It'll feel quite uncomfortable. but maybe it doesn't. And then you just want to be mindful of always making enough space. Now, where does this kind of compression come in? You're going to find in forward folds that things might need to change. So imagine you're sitting with your legs extended and you want your Upavista Konasana. Number one, cushion under your buttocks gives you a little bit more space to sit. Let me fix that. Gives you a little bit more space to sit upright. Good. Then, number two, do you need to bend your knees to give your core area a little bit more support? And then here's the key. Imagine you fold forward as your belly grows bigger. Eventually, this is where you stop. But even as you fold forward like this and just move a millimeter or two, you're going to create a sense of compression in your little sanctuary box. And so we open the legs out wide and fold forward this way. Now remember this little thing called relaxin that starts to be produced in your body in the second trimester to make space for the baby. You're going to feel like you've got so much space and you've gotten so flexible and you could just fold all the way forward. Try not to give in to that. So stay engaged. Make your stretches active, not passive. So you're not just collapsing into your flexibility, but you're working with the stability of each and every joint to make space in the body. Because your relaxing will eventually give you so much space to give in, but you don't want to put pressure on your joints to keep up with that, because that relaxing is not going to be there forever. Good. Now, a couple of things that might feel really good as you start to grow and change the shape of your body, and as you start to feel a couple of areas of tension in the body, it feels really good to release that. So this is one of the exercises that is very, very, very popular, and that places the hands on your knees and sit upright or bend the knees if the relaxin is giving in too much. And then just start to roll around. So everything that creates a sense of mobility in your sanctuary can feel like quite a relief, or maybe not. And just explore here, but keeping everything nice and engaged. Another thing that might feel really good as the belly starts to grow is what happens for a lot of women as the shape of the pelvis changes and the pubic bone changes. A certain sharp pain or strain within this kind of pubic area starts to sort of come up. And if that's the case, you can always stretch that out a little bit. So sitting up onto your cushion and just kind of turning the toes from side to side and giving a bit of mobility and stability to your groin like that. Good. And just moving from side to side. Another thing that you want to pay attention to as your belly starts to grow is your twists. So this is probably one of the most foundational pregnancy advice things that come up for women who are pregnant and practicing yoga. Now remember I said think of this little box as your solid but not indestructible sanctuary. So it can be squeezed and compressed if you put pressure. So this gentle box needs to stay open even as perhaps the rest of your torso doesn't. So very often in yoga you will have twists, and they come in two forms. You will have closed twists and you will have open twists. Now you see the difference? The difference is the lower abdomen. In our closed twists, for example, when you find your Ardha Matsyendrasana, for example, this is a closed twist. Now notice how I'm compressing my lower belly here. That is what you want to avoid. So if you're in a class that tells you to go into a twist, and this is what it looks like, you know, that's not for me. You change, sit in a cross-legged position, sit upright, and then just open your twist that way, maybe even that way. And you also start to feel that mobility in the spine without the compression of the lower back. So always turn your closed twists into open twists. Even if you don't go as far. Open twists versus closed twists. Open. Okay? So those are the twists to pay attention to. Then another thing to kind of bear in mind is that as the belly grows, your sun salutations might be a little bit problematic in terms of your cobras or your up dogs. So anything that means lying on your belly on a solid surface might become a little bit problematic. So let me show you a little bit of a sun salutation that is modified for that kind of need. So as the belly grows, and you don't want to be lying down on the ground and doing your cobras. Let me move that out of the way. Now, this is all very dependent. I'll show you 2 forms of sun salutations that might feel good for you in your pregnancy. And this all depends on whether you're comfortable with big energetic standing poses or whether you're not. Because your blood pressure eventually will tell you, nah, I'd rather stay on the ground, or it might tell you that you're good to go. So if there's no blood pressure issue at all, step the feet mat width distance apart, toes turned out. Good. And then really start to neutralize here. So this starts to happen a little bit as the belly grows. So you want to make an effort to neutralize that a little bit and bend into the knees just a tiny bit. So you're taking the weight of your body into your lower body. Okay? And then the hands reach up for high mountain. And then you fold forward with open legs, either if you have the space towards the ground, or if you don't have the space, towards maybe a block, or you put a chair right in front of you. So lifting up, inhale, exhale, fold forward. Then your transitions are quite important as the body becomes a little less mobile. So placing your hands on either the floor or the ground, step one leg back, drop the back knee, step the other leg back, drop the back knee. Now remember, in your sun salutation, you might have been in plank pose now. But what you want to avoid throughout pregnancy is deep abdominal work. So just leave your abdominals to be. You still want to have a nice solid center line, but you don't want to be really going into your deep abdominals. So instead you create a supported plank pose. So knees on the ground, hinge forward from the hips. Now this would be your normal plank pose in your normal sun salutation. This is your modified plank pose, and you lift the heart. Now from here, you would usually go into your cobra pose, lowering down onto the ground and lifting up. But because there's a belly there, instead, walk your hands back, interlace them behind your back, and then either come up onto your knees and lift, or stay on your knees and lift this way. It's up to you. Whatever feels better for you. Sometimes you want to pay attention to the knees because the relaxin really creates a bit of wobbliness there. So maybe even just putting a cushion under your knees. Lifting up. And then as you exhale, release. Hands towards the ground. Tuck your toes. And then maybe downward dog feels good. So see how you go. Opening the legs wide. Downward facing dog. Again, depending on your blood pressure, this might be good, this might not be good. If you have high blood pressure, you probably don't want to be here. Now, you're going to see how your blood pressure feels, how woozy you feel, how your energy feels, which determines how you continue from here. You might drop the knees and step forward. Or you might be able to walk your way to the front of the mat. Now from here, you're going to lift up into high mountain. If there's no blood pressure issues, you lift up and you flow again into your forward fold or your variation of it, chair, block, or all the way down. And then you step back. If your blood pressure did get a bit sticky, a bit woozy coming up, if you feel like, woo, you come up here and things get a bit woozy, then when you come up, tuck your chin into your chest, really create this pulling back, and then slowly, one vertebra at a time. Come up to standing. Especially in your first trimester, you might sense this as you move. And this can be mitigated by balancing the blood pressure before you lift up. So keep the chin tucked and then slowly come up. If that still doesn't work, then rather than coming up from the ground, you're in your downward facing dog. You lower the knees, you sit back, you wait a minute. If this feels good, you come back onto all fours and then step the right foot out towards the side. Tuck the toes under. Step the left foot towards the side. Now, one of the things that most pregnancies feel really comfortable with are squats. So you might want to come down into your squat, or you might just want to come down low into your squat, but the legs are wide apart so that there's space for the belly. And then place the hands on your thighs. Come up halfway. Take a moment. Or come up all the way and come to standing. So always check in with your blood pressure. So I'll do one sun salutation where the blood pressure does not get in the way and you can move quite freely up and down. Feet hip width distance apart. Bend the knees a little. Bear down into your center. Neutralize the pelvis. Lift the hands up. Breathe in. Exhale. Hands fold forward. Maybe onto the block, cushion, whatever you like to have there. Then step the right foot back. Drop the knee. Plant the hands. Step the left foot back. Drop the knee. Plant the hands. Good. Now from here, hinging forward from the hips. And once you progress in your pregnancy, and if this feels a little bit uncomfortable and you're starting to feel like this is too heavy or too much, then you can find a couple of cat-cow breaths here instead. So hinging forward from the hips or cat-cow breathing on all fours. Make sure your knees are not kind of feeling wobbly under you. If you need to, put a blanket or a bolster under. And then sit the hips back onto your heels. Interlace the hands behind your back. Option number one, lift this way. If your knees feel good. Option number two, lift this way. Now back bends are another thing to pay attention to, and we'll get to that just now. But this is your sun salutation. Removing the interlace behind your back, place the hands under your shoulders, tuck the toes, and lift back. Option number one, downward facing dog with a wide stance, or moving from all fours and stepping forward into a squat. And then either you lift up into your high mountain, or you bring the hands, you lift up into your high mountain, or you come up halfway. Give your blood pressure a moment, and then come up. Okay, I added way too much stuff in there, so I'll just do it without all of the other provisos in there. Feet hip width distance apart. Bend the knees. Lift the hands, high mountain. Hinge forward, wide-legged. Hands to wherever, block, ground, wherever. Step the right foot back, drop the back knee. Step the left foot back, drop the knee. Option 1, supported plank pose. Option 2, cat-cows. And these are going to feel real yummy eventually. Then from here, walk the hands back towards your knees. Option 1, stay seated on your heels. Option 2, come onto your knees. Interlace behind you. Lift the heart. Good. Keep the belly engaged. And then exhale. Sit down onto your hips. Release the grip. Come onto all fours. Option 1, downward facing dog. Option 2, stay on your knees. Make your way to the top of the mat, however it feels good. Maybe walking forward, maybe not. Feet stay nice and wide apart. Bend the knees into your forward fold. And then if you feel good, lift up to standing high mountain. And you start again. Now, to modify this for blood pressure, we're going to stay nice and low. So, come onto all fours into tabletop position. Take a couple of cat-cows. Then, sit back into the heels. Hands interlaced behind you. Roll the shoulders back, but keep the chin tucked. Try not to lift here if blood pressure is a bit of an issue, if you feel a bit woozy. Good. Release the grip of your hands. Bring the hands onto the ground. Option number 1, stay on all fours. Option number 2, downward facing dog. The feet nice and wide, toes turned outwards. Bend those knees and maybe roll the spine from side to side. Good. And then lower the knees back down into your tabletop. So, cat-cows. And then you avoid all of that standing up and coming back down. That might make you feel a bit nauseous. Then sit back into your heels, interlace the hands, lift. Big breath. Back onto all fours. Tuck the toes. Downward facing dog. All right? So those are the ways that you modify your sun salutation. Now, as you might have seen in the sun salutation, we have what's called back bends. Now, this is another thing to pay attention to in your pregnancy. So we tend to build up quite a lot of tension in the lower back. And this is aggravated by back bends if you don't pay attention to taking them properly. So rather than bending into your back, can you turn this into a heart opening? So, placing the hands onto your lower back, either stand on your knees or sit on your heels. Roll the shoulder blades back, and then keeping those ribs tucked in towards your center, can you feel an opening of the chest instead? So, maybe placing the hands on your ribs for the first time. As you lift the heart like this, avoid them from flaring forward, because that's when it goes into the lower back. So keeping those tucked in, pulling them down, lift the heart. Open space here. You might even be able to breathe without the baby pressing on your lungs. And that's it. So you don't want to go into those full deep back bends unless that is something that you do always anyways. You have contortionists and gymnasts and yoga teachers that practice every day that do still go into deep back bends when they're pregnant, but that is because their body is naturally comfortable doing that. So you don't want to start doing things in your pregnancy that you weren't doing before. So when it comes to back bends, it might feel good to just pull down through your lower back, tuck in through your ribs and just lift the heart. And that's enough. So that's what you pay attention to when you find your cobra variation in your sun salutation. Okay. All right, so paying attention to those back bends and to those heart openers and turning them into heart openers instead. Now, another thing that might become quite of a challenge for some is child's pose. And child's pose is a posture that comes up in pretty much every yoga class. And so sitting back onto your heels with your knees apart and coming down like that might feel like you're pressing onto your belly. So this sense of compressing your box, your sanctuary, even in your most common resting pose, can start to become quite problematic. So we find recovery pose instead. When child's pose is no longer available, stay with your hips over your knees. Come onto your forearms into recovery pose. Build a little fist or a little tower with your fists rather, and then just rest your forehead here. And this might feel like a real nice relief for your lower back, for your neck, for your shoulders. And just let yourself be here taking deep breaths. Good. So this is the kind of general information about modifying your asana practice as you move through the different stages of your pregnancy. It might feel really, really good to start to bring some movement and stretching into the hips. It might feel really, really good. Hello, friend. It might feel really, really good to release tension out of the lower back. And your body might tell you that it's really, really addicted to things like cat-cow. So listen to your body and change your asana practice accordingly. And you'll start to notice that it serves your pregnancy rather than posing a risk to it or getting in the way of it. There are so many things that Yoga Asana really adds to in the pregnancy. A couple of things that stand out are those cat-cow movements, also the squats. Eventually we want to really strengthen that pelvic floor and the different yogic squats that are available, from the Malasana squat, the yogi squat, to the goddess squat, etc. Those are really, really beneficial. They feel really good in the body at some point. And maybe they don't, so be a judge of that. But those are all the kinds of postures that really get built into quote-unquote prenatal yoga classes. That fortifying of your pelvic structure and that making space and releasing tension out of the spine. Also pay attention to your feet. Your feet might need a little bit of love and care as they start to swell. And so your toe stretch pose from your yin practice might be really good. So let me just show you the toe stretch here. Excuse me, friend. Excuse me. All right. So in your toe stretch is a little massage for your feet. Tuck the toes under behind you. Make sure all 10 toes are tucked. And then just sit back into your heels. You can keep your knees open like that to make space for the belly, and then just sit back. Now for most of us, this would be enough, and just kind of rolling around on your toes. But you might also feel like you can go a little bit further, and again, paying attention to your knees and the relaxing in your joints. You might put a cushion under your knees. Maybe you come and sit up on your toes. And then you just move around a little bit, and don't create too much strain or too much pain here. Take deep breaths, and then maybe release the feet behind you. Give them a little bit of a massage. Maybe even sitting back into your heels again to give them a little bit of a counter stretch. So really just giving your feet a little bit of love as they start to transform as well with your pregnancy. Everything in your body will change. And that's the beauty of it. You can support that with your asana practice. All right, so we've gone through the sun salutations, we've gone through the twists, we've gone into the back bends. So anything that feels like you are dipping into your lower back, modify it so that you have an open heart without a compressed lower back. We've gone into coming up and out of postures according to your blood pressure. So those are all kind of things that can help you modify your asana practice during pregnancy. And again, this will vary for each and every pregnancy, and there's no right or wrong for anyone. What you also will notice is that your energy level will change. And the way we manage, or your energy body, and the way we manage our energy body in yoga is through pranayama or breath practice. Now, breath practice does change when you're pregnant. A lot of the pranayama exercises that we do in day-to-day yoga will need to change or be left out through the duration of the pregnancy. Predominantly those breaths that create heat, you want to leave out of your practice. So ujjayi breaths and Bhastrika breath and Kapalabhati, those are all breaths that are not quite suitable for pregnancy because they build that heat and they detoxify, or they kind of, by building that heat, get rid of, toxins and stagnant energy. And you don't want that when you're pregnant. You want to keep everything as nourished and as regulated as possible. And so you want to kind of stay away from those practices. But there are pranayama practices that are really, really beneficial to your pregnancy. One of these would be your alternate nostril breathing. And you'll find instructions on how to do that on the platform in a lot of different videos. So your alternate nostril breathing called Nadi Shodhana, so Nadishodhana, I think. Very energizing and at the same time very soothing, really soothing. So that's a really good breath for when you're tired, when you're feeling a bit nauseous or a bit stressed and uncomfortable in the body. Then you have your yogic breath, so your 3-part breath of breathing into the full space of your body. Eventually the baby will start pressing in different areas and kind of compressing your space in the body. So it'll feel really, really good to do that yogic breath. Or 4-6 breath. So breathing into the count of 4 and breathing out to the count of 6. What you do want to avoid during pregnancy is what's called kumbhaka, or breath retention. So rather than doing the practices like the square breathing in which you hold your breath, you just want to feel a nice, even, linear breath in and out. So pay attention to your energy levels and how your pranayama, your breath practice, can support your energy levels and your energy body through your pregnancy. And there's a lot of different practices that will feel really good, and a lot of practices that you'll be able to tell are probably not for you while you're pregnant. Again, listen to your body. Not everyone is the same. Not every pregnancy is the same. Apart from that, what's important to note? What you might find during your pregnancy is that meditation practices feel really overwhelming and really emotional and a lot more tangible than they might feel when you're not pregnant. And that is completely normal. Your body is on this epic journey. You're starting to create the connection to the most important person in your life. You're growing your own little human. There's a lot going on energetically and emotionally. And so don't be surprised if your meditation practices start to feel quite different as well. See if you can embrace that and maybe explore that a little bit differently, and start to incorporate your growing baby into your visualizations, into your meditations, into your awareness practices, and see how that starts to form a connection quite differently between your body and your baby's body. There are so many beautiful ways in which you can connect to your baby through energy and through meditation. But that's a whole different kettle of fish. So I think my main message is be kind to your body, pay attention to it and listen to it. Don't let yourself be overwhelmed by what is not real, but let yourself be very present in what is real. Listen, pay attention, start to notice things, explore things, bring a sense of curiosity with instead of a sense of fear. And you might find that your yoga practice is the one thing that gets you through pregnancy. We've had a lot of students practice with us until pretty much the day they were due. And from everyone we practiced with, yoga made a huge difference. And so allowing that to be a part of your journey can be quite beautiful. This is just a little introductory video on what kind of to pay attention to and how you can modify the most basic things. But there's obviously a lot more to it, and all of that is individual. So know that we're here for you. Please reach out to us, message us, ask us questions, and take it really easy. The reason why we don't offer prenatal yoga as such is because there is no one size fits all for pregnancy. So rather than pretending like I can create a class for anyone who's pregnant, I would rather approach this as there's a couple of fundamental things to pay attention to when you're pregnant. But ultimately, the journey is your own. So we're here for you. Email us, get in touch with us, let us know your questions, and enjoy the journey. Thanks so much, guys.